Hello and welcome to Compound Insights, a podcast by CFA Society New York. I'm Rob Rowan, your host. Today we're talking to Sandra Rowe about blockchain. Sandra, thanks for being on this podcast. I've really been looking forward to this for some time. Although blockchain is in fewer headlines now, it has certainly had some more recent evolutionary moments. Some of them include a relatively small, but I think important venture capital allocation. And then there's the promotion of a blockchain phone, of all things, that will go on sale soon. So this is timely and interesting right now. On this podcast, we like to make sure that all the listeners have an understanding of where you're coming from. Could you start by telling the listeners about the company of which you're CEO, the Global Blockchain Business Council?
First of all, thank you so much for having me on the podcast. Appreciate the opportunity. As you mentioned, my name is Sandra Rowe. I'm the CEO of the Global Blockchain Business Council, better known as GBBC. It's a Swiss-based nonprofit, 3 years now in the making, focused on three main areas: education, advocacy, and partnership to build on and grow the business of blockchain. So it's a very practical-minded group around what is possible in terms of solving for real-world problems using the tech, and then focusing on discussing and bringing together stakeholders around the world, the most influential influencers around the world, including world leaders, legislators, regulators, central banks, executives at some of the biggest companies around the world, as well as leading startups.
Great. And could you also tell everyone about how GBBC got started, because it has some interesting beginnings with notable people, including Richard Branson?
Absolutely, with pleasure. So there is a blockchain summit which occurs every year on Necker Island, Sir Richard Branson's Necker Island. It's now the fifth year running in 2019. But back in 2016, a group of people got together and thought we should really look to help educate leaders around the world, unpack a lot of the hype and understand the true use cases around blockchain. And therefore, GBBC was born. We launched at Davos in January of 2017 and has been in existence since then. We started with 35 GBBC ambassadors who help us on the ground in various countries. And now soon we will be announcing over 50 different ambassadors in countries around the world.
Wow, that is rocket-style growth. Members of CFA Society New York might remember Sandra speaking at the second annual Digital Asset Conference a few months back. Sandra's full video and some clips are available on our website. Now, as I said earlier, blockchain seems to be entering an important stage in its growth. Where do you see it now?
The blockchain has many different elements, and there are different stages of growth in the elements. So meaning, when I think about enterprise blockchain use cases, certain industries are much further along than others. For example, financial services has been looking at post-trade distributed ledger technology for 5+ years now. And then you have other industries, for example, aviation, healthcare, energy, that probably have been looking at the space in earnest only in the last couple years. And so we see different areas of development, but what is happening for sure are viable use cases that are now coming into play. The next question remains, which will scale and which use cases will prove to be the most useful for various industries? And just on the other side, people talk about Bitcoin and crypto and digital assets. That's a very important component. Bitcoin's obviously almost 11 years old now, so it's been around for quite a while, but there's still a lot of noise and confusion around, what exactly are cryptocurrencies useful for? Are they investment tools? Are they actually mechanics for creating efficiencies in payments? And I think, we're still seeing that area evolve as well.
Do you have any good bets or ideas on which sectors will scale the best?
So where we're seeing some very interesting use cases are really around where are there not existing infrastructure, almost greenfield opportunities, and where can trust and transparency be useful? I'll give you a couple examples. There are a few countries around the world that have looked at creating land registry. And why is that important? Well, land registry is important because it gives you the right and title to a piece of land or a house or a property. And if you don't have that, it leads to all kinds of problems, financial and also, political and et cetera, et cetera. So there are countries like Georgia. I'm not talking about the state. I'm talking about the country.
Right.
Even Kazakhstan is also looking at potentially highlighting this, but Georgia's actually started doing land registry. There are a handful of countries around the world that do not have formal land registry processes, or if they do, they're quite riddled with potential fraud and issues around, the validity of these land titles. And so Georgia, and I know there's been a small one also done in Ukraine and a few other locations. Kazakhstan's also announced they're looking at land registry. They become blockchain based because there's the verification and record keeping aspect of it. And some people might argue, well, why not just use a database? It's just as good, isn't it? And I would say a couple things. One is, if you have the ability to use latest tech to leapfrog, especially when you don't have existing infrastructure, why wouldn't you look at that, right? And then secondly, there's another element that blockchain can offer, which is a few steps in. You register the land, you have the record, which is verified, and once verified, it's there, it's immutable. And then beyond that, what if over time you can overlay smart contracts? And if you'd like, I can do that. But it's an application that basically allows you a programmable action over and over and over again. What if you could include legal aspects into these contracts that are automated, if it's a clean, simple process, for example? And what if you could also embed a payments layer? And if you could do all of that on a blockchain system, it makes it much more efficient and, frankly, better record keeping and auditing is built in.
This sounds mostly like it's frontier markets and those that had communal ownership of their land in their histories. The argument for the database seems somewhat quixotic. When countries have no infrastructure, they do not start with cobblestone streets and horses, they start with roads. So why would these countries start with less modern form of data management? Where do you think that the risks are in the adoption or implementation of the scaling of blockchain?
Yeah, and I just had a great conversation. I'm sitting in London, and I have to tell you, I've had a great conversation with some financial institutions about where do we get to scaling? And that's a great question to ask. Who is going to do the scaling? So there's two paths. There's one path that says governments and large enterprises have the ability to scale. So when you're talking about whether it's JP Morgan announcing some sort of settlement coin, or whether it's Walmart saying they might be doing a coin, or Libra association in association with Facebook, these are really big projects and have real significance in terms of potential impact to society. And so when we look at who is going to do it, I point to governments and large enterprises. Now, the flip side of that is that this space has also been very grassroots driven. So when you think about projects like Ethereum, what happened? A group of people got together and they've now created something that is pervasive around the world, and Bitcoin included as well. And these are really grassroots movements, and that has scaled, where now it's pervasive and hopefully maybe one day ubiquitous. But the challenges I see right now is we've got tons of blockchains, lots of different technology still being tested out. And when I look at the infrastructure layer, I'm not worried that we won't eventually get to the places where, we address things like confidentiality, privacy, making sure that the right actors are involved, or if you identify a bad actor, how quickly can you eject that bad actor? What do you do with that bad actor? These are all elements that are technical and also governance related discussions that are being had today. What we don't have the answer to is which models are going to win. And I think we're still very much at the experimentation phase of the technology as well as the governance structure. And there may be several models. And it lends to very different thinking than what we have today, which is, and a lot of people have heard this, 360-degree shared economy model. What does that look like? Where you actually pay people for contributing to the network, which, some could argue is the opposite of the model today, where lots of consumers provide data, provide information, and, companies might argue, well, you're getting a service and you're getting access to the platform for free. I think there's just very different thinking around data has value. Data in the future is also money as well as information. And how does that change the playing field?
Now, let's switch gears a little bit to the governance and regulatory issues. I know that Switzerland and Canada are among the more forward-thinking countries around blockchain and fintech as a whole. Are there other countries in your view that are doing well right now?
Singapore has been incredibly forward-thinking. I think also when you look at digitally focused countries like Estonia, They are doing lots of different elements within emerging tech. Believe it or not, I think lesser known would be the likes of like the AIFC, which is inside of Kazakhstan, which is in the main capital, who recently changed their name to Nur Sultan, used to be called Astana. And that financial center is really trying to target fintech and innovation and looking at brand new models for attracting talent abroad and locally. So there are bright spots around the world. There's also Caribbean islands that are looking at their own digital currency. People are doing different things. And what's really interesting, I find, is that we're seeing some of the most innovative thoughts and action coming out of small island countries as well as small countries in general.
Yeah, and just one note, you don't have to move your capital to do this. So if you're a sovereign manager here, listen, you don't have to do that. We should also talk about coin. You talked a little bit about Libra and Bitcoin, but there are still a lot of them out there. Do you anticipate a shakeout that will get us down to 1, 2, or 10?
Yeah, so I'm sure there are people in the crypto space who will not appreciate this view that I've had very publicly for a very long time, which is, the vast majority were grand experiments, and most will go away. They will just not reach the scale and adoption that they need to sustain themselves for the long term. My view is, though, when you look at something like the concept of Libra, it's a very different proposition because you inherently have a built-in distribution network. One of the main things right now about the newfound blockchains out there with the tokens is the fact that they're not getting the people building on top of their blockchains that you need, the adoption, the mass adoption that you need for things to actually grow and sustain themselves. And that's why I think most projects will probably fail, is just the lack of applications and people using the functionality of the blockchains. But to be frank, there's also a fair amount of probably unattractive projects as well that have gotten money or have managed to crowdfund. But when I look at Libra and when I look at some of the big enterprises launching their own tokens, there's no guarantee for success. But what they're trying to do is at a scale with built-in distribution that one has to look at. 2.3 billion people or accounts is significant. It's bigger than any country. Therefore, one needs to take a look at it and say, hey, what is the possibility here? And how does it work? And to me, if any one of these large projects do take off, they will set the tone for the governance and how things will evolve.
Now, I'd like to shift again to something that's a little closer to home for CFA Society New York members, the financial markets. When I started thinking about the impact of blockchain on the financial markets, I thought immediately of structured finance. ABS, CMBS, and structured credit are document heavy and require some accounting for distributions. I was thinking that the impact of smart documents and the security of the blockchain would be important to investors in these products. What do you think about that? And are there others?
So I will tell you, when I was at CME Group, we looked at various use cases. And one of the first ones that did come up were around very paper-based, sort of fragmented and inefficient processes. And one of them was definitely letters of credit, invoice financing, along the lines that you've mentioned. Even corporate actions and securities was another one that was named. And when we think about that, I'm like, yes, it makes sense. I would absolutely think we could automate all of this stuff. I think the complication of having existing systems and processes is the will to change. And sometimes the culture and the will to change prevent the actual change from happening. And I think in the case of structured finance, for example, it's happening, but not at the rate of change that I would have expected since we're about 5 years on from initial discussions.
Right.
Part of that, I think, has to do with the culture of change that needs to happen at large organizations, which is very difficult. I think it's also the fact that you've got lots of different actors that would need to participate in order to truly benefit from, from the scale and the derived efficiencies. And frankly, the other question is really, how do you make money off of that? It's an efficiency play. And I think when there's increased pressure to find revenue, that's not going to necessarily be found in projects like this. for use cases like that. It will be an efficiency play. Somebody really, really thinks they can get that many actors together, or I should say stakeholders together to participate, then you could probably get the efficiencies that you need in terms of, sort of the multi-million dollar efficiencies that would get someone's attention. But a pilot, it's difficult. We've done them ourselves, and I know for a fact that, getting 6 to 8 banks or financial institutions around the table to agree, you spend 6 months arguing about IP.
Right. Would there be any impact, any greater impact, you think, starting with the investors? Because the problem with this is the banks only get a little bit out of this. The rating agencies get a little bit out of it. There are different actors in this. But really, it's the investors who get the better peace of mind and the lower risk.
I agree. And we're seeing some interest and activity coming out of the asset management and buy-side space. Mm-hmm. But I'll be very frank with you. In our conversations, and again, this is just our conversations through our post-trade distributed ledger group. Mm-hmm. We've got, for example, the likes of Janice Henderson, who is a organizing committee member. And we've got a handful of asset managers and hedge funds we've been talking to, and they recognize that there are benefits to blockchain. I think the industry itself has not really coalesced around a particular drive forward together. I think different groups are doing different things. We are working on actually a buy-side overview, so hopefully we'll have a thought piece on that. We've done a survey just to see what the climate is like for the large asset managers. But I think there's still a bit of a laggard viewpoint around it from a tech benefit standpoint. We're seeing much more interest from some of the small hedge funds and asset managers around the crypto investment side, which is very different.
Oh, okay, interesting. So when do you think your survey will be out? It sounds really interesting to our members.
That will be out before the end of the year. We're hoping to get it out before December, but it will. We've just finished, I think, the bulk of the survey, and we're looking to, we're doing this in collaboration with Janice Henderson, so we will hopefully get the piece out in the next couple months. We'll let you know.
And I assume that they could find that type of content on your website?
Yes, we have an open learning forum. It is completely free and open, as it says, for anyone who would like more information on blockchain use cases and papers. And we do curate. So we've curated from a number of universities as well who've written thought pieces.
Thank you, Sandra. I think you made some great points about the issues around scaling and the importance of governance. Thank you, and we'll talk again soon.
Thank you. I appreciate it, and look forward to hearing from CFA Society of New York, especially regarding more blockchain topics and activities. Appreciate it.
I hope you enjoyed our podcast. If you have not yet, please subscribe at the podcast app of your choice. Also, please visit us on the web at cfany.org.